Alright, so we've been learning JavaScript and we've been learning computer programming at the same time. So far we've covered variables, if-else statements, and comparison operators. Next up, we're going to learn functions. Functions, at first, to a new programmer can feel a little tricky, but I promise you they'll catch on a lot faster than it feels like at the very beginning. So stick with it and do what we do in this exercise a couple days in a row, and you're going to feel pretty confident with what functions are. Before we get into functions, let's move JavaScript into our web page because we don't want to be writing functions in the console. It's too many lines, it would be too annoying. So here we go, we're on our index.html file, and if you're going to insert CSS on your page, there's two ways to do it. You can do a style tag, and then anything within the style tags is treated as CSS, or you can pull in an external style sheet, another file with a link tag. JavaScript works the same way. We can run a script tag, and then anything within this script tag is treated as JavaScript. I'm going to say alert, and I'm also going to hit save, and I'm running what's called live reload. So when I save my file, this web browser is going to automatically reload my page. If you're doing this on your own without live reload, you're going to have to save and then hit refresh. If you want to see how I'm doing live reload, I'll put some links to that in the description, but it might be a little over your head if you're a brand new user. So there you go, you can see that now my web page, when it reloads, has alerted an empty alert for me. And there's a reason I put the script tag at the bottom of the page, and let me show you why by moving it up towards the top. I'm going to hit save again, and you'll notice that now I get the alert before I see my web page. I have an empty page and the alert fires. This happens because JavaScript happens in sequence as your web page is rendering all the elements. What that means is when your browser opens up your HTML file, it's going to start going through line by line and adding in all the elements. So when it gets to a script tag, it's going to load all that JavaScript, and then it's going to run it before it does anything else. So in this case, it runs my alert up here before it's rendered all these elements onto the page. You know, JavaScript is really pretty fast. You're not really doing alerts a lot, so all the user will normally notice if you put your script at the top of the page is the web page might feel like it appears a little bit slower. If you put it down here at the bottom of the page, right before the closing body tag, then what's going to happen is your web page will spit out all the content first, so it looks like the web page is loaded, and a split second later, your script will be activated. And web developers have learned over the years that this creates a much faster feeling web page, and the user doesn't know any different. So we recommend that you always put your script tags at the bottom, right before your closing body tag. There's almost never a reason that your script needs to go in the top, up in the header. So the script tag is the first way of doing it, and just like a link tag, you can also give the script tag a file to pull in as well. So in this case, I'm going to delete the content, and I'm just going to go source, src equals, and then that basically is like the href is for CSS. So instead of pulling in the styles main.css, I'm going to pull in the scripts main.js. And now that file gets loaded in and executed as soon as it's loaded. The normal folder name for JavaScript is going to be called a JS folder or a scripts folder. So here we have scripts, JS is just fine, either one works. So now I'm loading in this main.js file, so if I hit alert and save, you see I get that alert as well, and it's already rendered my web page first before it's executing my JavaScript. So there's how you get JavaScript on a page. If you have multiple JavaScript files, you can do multiple script tags just like that, and it will execute them in order. It's going to run my main.js first, then my main.2, then my main.3, then my main.4. So that's what's going to happen if you have multiple script tags, if you want to break up your JavaScript into several files to make it easier to maintain. So let's go ahead and learn about functions. So functions are basically a piece of code that does one or more actions. Piece of code that does one or more actions. So I'll just show you what a function is because it's a lot easier to see it than to hear about it. You start off by typing function, and we'll just call this function go. You open and close your parentheses, and then you open and close your curly braces. So whatever I put in here is going to execute when the go function is called. So let's just say alert hi, alert hey there. And so it's going to do 2 alerts. I'm going to save, my web page refreshes, and guess what? Nothing happens. Because I defined my go function, but I didn't call my go function. I call it by saying go, open close parentheses, and then a semicolon. Now when I refresh, it's going to say hi, and then it's going to say hey there. I have my function. A cool thing about functions is they can be called as many times as you want. I can call go twice. Hi, hey there. Hi, hey there. So that's kind of cool. Another thing about functions is they accept what are called arguments. Let me show you what arguments are. I could say name, age, and then instead of alerting hi, hey there, I can alert name, and I can alert age. Now, in order for it to know what the name and the age are, I pass them in when I'm calling my function. So I can say my name is Will, and I'm 34 because I just had a birthday. So now, Will gets passed in as the first argument, which is name, and 34 gets passed in as a second argument, which is age. So now it's going to alert Will, and then it's going to alert 34. Let's save it. There you go, Will. There you go, 34. Once again, these are called arguments. And what arguments allow us to do is they allow us to make code reusable. Because at first you might think, I could just stick to go. I could go var name equals Will, and then var age equals 34. And then I could forget this whole arguments thing, and I could just say alert name age. Well, yep, that's going to do the same thing. It's going to alert Will, and it's going to alert 34. But if I code it with arguments, it's reusable. Let me show you. Let's go back to name age. Let's go back to Will 34. And now I can call it a second time with a different person. Let's say my wife, Laura, 28. There we go. So now it's going to run one time with Will and 34. Will, 34. And then the next time it runs, it's going to run with Laura, 28. And so that's kind of a good way of coding. It's called dry, which is do not repeat yourself. If I could spell. Do not repeat yourself. D-R-Y. Do not repeat yourself. Or don't repeat yourself. So dry code is a good thing. We want to code as little as possible. That makes it easy to maintain. That makes for as few lines of code as possible. So that's kind of what a function does. It accepts arguments and it runs multiple commands. Now a function also returns a value. Whatever you type in return will actually give you a value out. Let me show you what a return value does. You might remember from prompt, earlier in the first lesson, we went var name equals prompt. And then prompt opened up a window. Well, I'll just show you right there. It opened up a window. And then when I said will enter, will got passed in from the prompt into my name variable. So what actually happened was prompt had a return value that name received. You see that it executed this first, and when prompt was done, whatever prompt returned, which was my name Will, went into name. And so how you code a function like that is very simple. Let's make a function called add. And let's make it first, second. We want to add 2 numbers together. And so I'm going to go add, let's say var sum equals add 1 and 2. So we're going to add 1 and 2 together. And so instead of just going first plus second, I'm going to return first plus second. So now, nothing actually happens in this function, like alerts or anything like that. We are going to return the value of first plus second, which means it's going to run the function executes, it returns, kicks back out first plus second, which means that it's going to add 1 and 2, and then that is going to get passed into sum. So now I can alert sum, and sum is going to be 3. There you go, 3. Because I added 1 and 2, it returned that back out. So I could do something silly like this. I could pass in add 1 and 2, that's 1, that's 2. I'm just going to return will. So now it's just going to say, well, sum equals will, and I alerted 2. I basically ignored my arguments. I returned whatever value I wanted to return, which didn't make any sense, and that value got passed into here. So now no matter what I pass into add function, it's always going to return will. Of course, again, that's kind of silly. I want to return 1 plus 2. And now I have my add function. Another way that you can do this, with a little bit less code, is I could just alert add 1 and 2. So it's going to run this first because this is an inner function. JavaScript is going to know I have to run this in order to know what to give to alert. Whatever this returns, I'm going to pass into my alert function as the value. So this will do the exact same thing. It's going to run 1 and 2. 1 and 2 returns 3. And then as far as JavaScript is concerned, it's just going to alert that returned value. So I'm going to save that. You see it alerts 3. Let me show you what happens if you return a second time. Let's return Will now. It does absolutely nothing, because as soon as the return happens, this function is finished. What happens after the return never fires. JavaScript is done. So I can say alerts, hi there. And you're never going to see alert hi there. It alerts 3 from down here, and I never see the alert hi there up here. The function ran, it returned, and then the function was finished. Now you can have multiple returns. You could do something like, let's go var name equals, we'll say this. Let's go alert, add is kind of a bad, we'll go back to go since we're not going to be doing adding. Will, and we'll go back to my age of 34. So this is going to be now called go name age. If age is less than 20, then we are going to return name plus an exclamation mark, because after all, I'm less than 20. That's pretty cool. Else, we are just going to return my name. So now this will return a different thing. If my age is less than 20, then I'm going to return name shouted. Else, I'm going to return just my name. So go now, we'll check this out, and it's just going to return my name because I'm older than 20, and then I'm going to alert that. There you go, just Will. So let's change my name to 19, and now it's going to shout my name, because after all, you shout at teenagers a lot more than you do at adults. And what happens if I don't return anything at all? Let's say I say go name and age, and I'm going to get undefined. So this function has no return, which means it's returning nothing, which means it's returning undefined. Which brings us to one more of our types in JavaScript, and that is the undefined type. If I say var a, but I don't give it a value, then I alert a, it's going to alert undefined. I defined a as a variable, but I didn't define the value of a. So another type in JavaScript is undefined, and it means simply, well, undefined. So that's about all you need to know with that. So by default, every function is going to return undefined unless you give it a return value. Will again. So there you go, that's functions. Let's leave it there for now. So I'm going to say go ahead and make an addition function, make a subtraction function, make a multiplication function, make some functions, play around with them. And once you feel confident with that, let's move on to our last lesson before we get into some actual useful things that we can use JavaScript for on our webpage.